Hello, everybody. Welcome to A Good Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined today by a rehired Denny Carter, Patrick Kerrane, and Kyle Dvorchak. We are each going to be highlighting two players you will not catch us drafting in 2022, and then agreeing in consensus and moving on. Not debating any of the players that we won't be drafting. So, we're going to each be the people we have the mental blocks against, the people we will never draft again, the people we can never click draft on. We thought it'd be a good time, a summer, to talk about, since there's quite literally nothing else going on. Just nothing at all.
It's tough. I will say, as you know, as an avid digger for news, and I mean, I'll read anything that might have some news. I'm not finding any. There's nothing going on.
Denny does find Denny finds sites that I didn't even know exist. Like he'll get like a Titans blurb. I'm like, oh, it's a new website I didn't know.
From titans.football.net.onion.
Yeah. Well, Denny's been quoting a lot of articles from a site called The Onion, and I'm not sure that A.J. Brown said he would rather explode into a ball of like gaseous chemicals than play for the Eagles. Or
that's what I read. Look, if I read it. The things are vetted before they're put online. Okay, so I know that it's true if I find it on the internet. That's
there's nothing else going on. I was just wondering if anyone else on this. So I'm like a hopeless sports junkie. I watch like every single sport except for F1, which I'm just bored to tears with that Netflix show. By the way, my God, I don't know how you guys are into that, but like I watch every single sport
show.
Yeah, I'm just bored to tears with that, man.
Pat likes baseball. His beliefs are a bit reversed.
Baseball, there's action. This one's like Australian guy.
Wow. That's the whole point of baseball.
There's no action. Since I was 9, my parents are from Monte Carlo and have $4 billion each, and I overcame that adversity to become like, all right, whatever. Like,
you'd rather watch a guy step out of a box and adjust his gloves every 10 seconds.
Yeah, hey, you know what? They're trying to crack down on that. Trying to and you know what? I guess you're not watching Sunday morning baseball on Peacock like I am. So
I still am. I hate baseball, but I do it, in solidarity with Peacock.
I love Sunday morning baseball on Peacock, which I knew existed before right now.
Yeah.
And no, not even kidding. No one told me to promote this, but Ahmed Fareed is taking part in a special broadcast, friend of the show this week, on the Peacock MLB game. So check that out. But yeah, other sports do exist. Kevin Durant's trying to be traded. College football continues to be like in a Mexican standoff with itself, just destroying itself for some reason. Although not actually destroying itself, since it's making itself ever more fabulously wealthy, which is apparently the only thing that matters. But I just wanted to explore the concept of other sports with you guys and see if you knew about it. Did anybody hear about this?
Okay, well, that's the under again. That's 9 straight unders for the Jay Leno impression.
Yeah.
I know for a fact Denny is at least, I assume, playing tennis DFS. You were tweeting about tennis, and I know you wouldn't tweet about a sport that isn't football if you weren't gambling on it.
And he's been tweeting about baseball. He tweeted about the Dodgers the other day.
I assume that was DFS related too. I can't imagine. I guess Denny's old enough to like baseball, but from the analytics I've run on Denny's account, he does not tweet about anything sports related that isn't football that he's not gambling in some fashion on. And I have the same thing. I was tweeting about the same stuff too, not tennis, but Dodgers specifically. So we're both gambling. I don't know if that has translated to watching. It certainly hasn't for me.
No. It was tennis. It was Wimbledon. I made some lineups for Wimbledon. It didn't go well. I did not watch any of it because tennis is
Sampras. Yeah, he just did not have a good first round match, right, Denny?
It's exactly, and I had him in every lineup. What are you gonna do? But you know what? Though I'll see Kyle's tweets about a chalky pitcher going down.
Dodgers just played in Coors, and those are just the worst slates to have because you're like, I know what the right thing is to do, and I don't know if I have the strength.
Clayton Kershaw had a 3.25 WHIP in 4 innings in Coors, which if you don't follow baseball and know what it's almost impossible to have a WHIP that high through 4 innings. And
I don't know if that's good or I literally don't know if what you're saying is good or bad. Did he do well?
Yeah, I thought all these pitchers, they took him out after 2 to save their arms these days.
Yeah, I mean.
But the thing is, baseball sounds fun and good, and the fact that the ball is now made of like lead is also good, right, Pat?
Yeah, well, that's another. Baseball is, boy, do they love tampering with the ball. Like they hired like the Deflategate guys, and like he just like ruined the ball. And then however you ruin it, can you just ruin it in the complete opposite fashion 2 months later? So they go back and forth between like jackrabbit balls and medicine balls. Where like, all right, people are getting a little suspicious that they're hitting baseballs all the way out of like RFK Stadium. I'm trying to think of like a big old stadium that doesn't even exist anymore.
They're like the punter who hit the jumbotron in the
Dallas
arena. They're doing
and
that.
like mysteriously they're hitting balls into like the Atlantic Ocean out of Yankee Stadium, and then 2 months later they can no longer hit it out of the infield. And they need to maybe settle on a baseball. It's a good sport though. You should check it out.
Yeah, other than us
Sounds so
roasting
good.
it for a few minutes.
Sounds great.
I'd only watch it on Peacock on Sunday mornings. That's kind of what I find to be the most appealing aspect of it.
There you go, Kyle. And now it's time to talk about the only sport that matters, NFL football. Just raging right now on June 30th. There's just so much going on in NFL football. It's just I can't even keep up with it. I say that now, and then like there's gonna be like 2 trades and 2 arrests in like the next 7 days, and there really is just never a dull moment. But we're going to talk about players you will not catch us drafting this summer. And we're going to start with Denny. Denny, who is the first player we will not catch you drafting?
I feel a little bit weird about saying like you definitely will never see me drafting this guy. But at ADP, I will not be drafting AJ Brown with his, wide receiver 11.
Wide receiver 11 currently on Underdog.
ADP. I can't.
Do you have a reason for this? It's not like you're just gonna say that and just move on.
Yeah, we're done. All right. So Kerrane, who's your first guy?
That's a good one, Denny. All right, my first guy.
Well, look, could he could he dominate targets? I guess the positive thing would be dominate targets. The Eagles are more pass heavy, not pass heavy totally, but more balanced, I should say, on offense. He gets a large chunk of that target share, and he has been an efficient producer. So I guess that would be the positive argument for AJ Brown. But man, I'm kind of surprised. Wide receiver 11, like maybe that's just the sharps on Underdog, and maybe when we have more casual folks coming into the fold, maybe that'll get down. Wide receiver 15,
I feel like they'll just push it up, probably.
No, really? No,
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, all the wide receivers are going to fall on Underdog, I think, a little bit because they're all a bit higher. Yeah.
Right. No, because see, Pat, look, AJ Brown has hurt a lot of people's feelings with injuries and whatnot.
That's true, actually. There probably are a lot of vendettas against AJ Brown.
Right. And I don't think that generally he is seen as an elite wide receiver.
But my theory on AJ Brown is that he's seen as like a big play guy, and like people are always like cannot like they always even like quote unquote like normie drafters, like if you've scored like a 70-yard touchdown for them at some point, they like never move on from you.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. You're right. His ADP will probably come down. What's the general drafting public logs on though?
And I would be fine with that. And in fact, like in like big best ball tournaments or whatever, like stacking Eagles sounds like a good, somewhat contrarian strategy. I mean, stacking the Eagles passing game, I should say. So I get that appeal. But if you're just talking about like straight redraft stuff, man, I mean, you look at the guys, going at T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill is wide receiver 9 to wide receiver 11 for AJ Brown. Michael Pittman goes after Brown. I'd rather have those guys than Brown.
Would you have Marquise Brown or AJ Brown?
AJ Brown.
All right.
AJ Brown.
Yeah. So you mentioned Pittman. He's going after him. What other wide receivers would you be taking? Because Higgins is a decision point. They go like right next to each other. Tyreek Hill, I think, generally goes ahead. Kind of count on him to be gone usually. So like,
would you have Keenan Allen, Denny?
Keenan Allen, Mike Williams.
I would rather have both Chargers wide receivers. I would even rather have.
You'd have Mike Williams than AJ Brown. You'd have a worse version of AJ Brown than AJ Brown.
I mean, it's on a team that
Can someone explain to me what's going on with the Mike Williams discourse? Like, what has materially changed with Mike Williams since last year? I haven't really understood the Mike Williams explosion this summer, where he was a different player for 5 games last year, and then he was Mike Williams the final 12. And I'm just not quite sure what has changed with Mike Williams since
I almost picked Mike Williams as my guy I'm not drafting because I haven't drafted him in Best Ball Mania. I didn't get it as early into Best Ball Mania. Some of us still like dynasty leagues. We like our rookie drafts. We don't want to have to draft like the week after the draft in best ball. So yeah, I know. I blew it. I actually am so mad at myself for my dynasty loyalty because all the best values in Best Ball Mania were that first week. But Mike Williams jumped up from like round 6 or something to where he's going in the early 3rd now, and I've only had the early 3rd price available to me, so I literally haven't drafted him. My hope is that he is getting pushed up because of stacks with Cooper Kupp, which I think is happening. I think basically everyone agrees that you got to get that.
Pat, they don't play on the same team. I don't understand.
Yeah,
tell us. They play each other week 17, where all the money is, guys. It's a GPP that they have over at Underdog.
My teams that don't advance to week 17, because none of them will, are going to absolutely crush punching at the air as they drop, just hundreds of points for nothing.
But I think that is having a big effect on Williams' ADP and probably Keenan's ADP to an extent, although he was going roughly in that range before. But that will probably also, that tie might get a little weaker as more normies come in. So in the same way that maybe we see some running backs increase in value as more casual drafters come in, maybe we see Mike Williams fall back down the board a little bit, in which case I'll be more willing to draft him. But it does seem like you're pricing in most of the upside right now.
Yeah, like all of it. And Denny, by the way, I just started yelling. Were you done talking about AJ Brown?
Yeah, you did. All right. So just talking about other receivers around that range, I'd happily take AJ Brown over Marquise Brown, who I think is wildly overvalued at wide receiver.
Weren't you an early driver of that though? I thought you were kind of all in.
Yeah, I was when I thought he was going to go wide receiver 25 or something.
Yeah,
but 15.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle, I don't think is really, for me, is not close to AJ Brown, and they're kind of in the same area. The one thing I wanted to say, maybe I'm going to get fired for this. Who knows? But
likely, it seems likely.
I'm taking DJ Moore straight up over AJ Brown.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that. I mean, so I wrote up AJ Brown as a bust for the magazine, where like the Eagles. I mean, when the Eagles became good last year, it was with a 55% run rate. Like, I mean, we're talking like prehistoric levels after that Bucs game, and it's not like it's a thin target. Like even if they say the passing rate increases from 45% to like 53%, something more normal this year, it's not exactly like it's a thin like skill core. There's like a lot of people vying for targets, and it just seems like a tailor-made bust season for AJ Brown, where the whole argument is that he's just going to have to be a special player, which of course he is quite capable of being. But like, I feel like you need more pillars to stand on than this guy is going to be a special player. And I feel like that's like really the only like sensible positive argument for AJ Brown in the Eagles offense.
Well, I've drafted a lot of AJ Brown, so allow me to defend myself here. I really feel like the chances to get, a Jonathan Taylor type, Christian McCaffrey, or even Cooper Kupp to start your draft, and then pair him with a good second round running back, or you can get T. Higgins and AJ Brown. I've done that start. Jonathan Taylor, T. Higgins, AJ Brown. I mean, to get wide receivers of that talent level paired with the number one running back is like, to me, seems like kind of a rare opportunity. And like I don't know, it feels like we're hand waving the idea that AJ Brown is very much a special player. I mean,
it's true.
I'm in a dynasty startup right now. He was wide receiver 4. Like, the talent-based argument on AJ Brown is extremely strong. His prospect profile wasn't ideal second-round pick, but I think both his real-life NFL evaluation and some of the production metrics held down a little bit by the fact that he was at the same school with DK Metcalf. The two superstars playing together, we've seen that, can potentially make those guys a little bit less valued as prospects. Comes in immediately, crushes. He has a career yards per out run of 2.59. He's been above 2.4 in every season, above 2.6 since his second season. He had a career high 2.72 last year. I know it was a injury marred season, but he was fantastic last season. He's literally playing with his best friend in Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to get targets, guys. Like, I'm not too worried about, Devontae Smith infringing on AJ Brown's target. I think Devontae Smith is going to be a very good secondary option, but he was a secondary option last year to a tight end. So AJ Brown,
but that tight end is still on the roster.
He is still on the roster.
Great.
He is still on the roster. Yeah,
Zach Ertz isn't on the roster, guys. I'm afraid to.
It's definitely not like he's going to get a 32% target share. That type of outcome's not on the table. But with the Eagles, they started last year pass heavy. That didn't work out great. They went really run heavy to close it, sort of in the middle back half of the season, and then to close the season, they came back up a little bit towards. They're still run first, but not crazy run.
I mean, it really was crazy. It was 45% their pass rate after the Bucs game, which was
they ended the year at 50% run rate, or it's like 50-50 split perfectly, and that came after, like Kerrane said, they tried to pass the ball a lot. They let Jalen Hurts kind of play Superman ball, and so to get to last place after starting as a balanced in the way we talk about pass first kind of balanced, to start the season like that, and then to still end as the most run heavy team in the NFL by 1% is insane how far they shifted.
It is, but it shows that they're willing to try stuff out and they're willing to adjust. So it leads me to think there's upside to this offense if they, their big change in the offseason was to add AJ Brown. Perhaps we see them start the season again as a pass first team. I think they'll probably be like a slightly run first team, like maybe where the Colts were last year is the most likely, but there's a chance that they're actually a pass first team this year, which would be huge. And so the upside of AJ Brown in a pass first offense as the number one target, I recognize that there's a wide range of outcomes. He could be a total bust, but man, I can't stop dreaming here, guys.
Yeah, no, this is the thing, with the Ravens last year, you go into last year thinking the Ravens are going to be super run heavy like they always have been. They come out, they're passing way, way more than at least I thought. And then so Mark Andrews goes bananas, right? That scenario could unfold here, and I would look silly.
Yeah, Kerrane at least makes it where there's more than enough uncertainty where if you have just belief in the player and belief that there's no way a team can be running, 55% of the time again, where there's certainly lots of uncertainty based upside. But man,
Miles Sanders didn't seem very bullish on that podcast appearance about his carry total. So
no, what was going on with that? He didn't he?
That was weird.
I think he said he was going to score 2 to 3 fantasy points a week.
Yeah, a game.
This guy, I think he thinks he's Boston Scott.
Yeah. So I actually, I couldn't quite hear what he was saying. There was a part where it was jumbled. I went back and rewinded that thing, I don't know, 5 times. And I had my ear up to the speaker trying to hear what he said. Cause I'm I got to hear this. He mumbled through most of it. I don't know what he was saying, but basically he was saying, as we have on the site, don't use me.
Seemed big mad. Not quite sure. There's always weird summer narratives with the Eagles.
And he rightfully does not want to be does not like fantasy managers. Rightfully. I mean, if I were a player, I would hate me.
Yeah, I don't like fantasy managers, and I am one, and I'm podcasting with 3 others.
That's a very fair point to Miles Sanders. And Kyle, we'll have you go next. Who is the first player you are not drafting in general? As you guys are sickos enough that you probably have shares of everybody, but who are you generally not drafting at their current ADP?
Yeah, I think I picked players who I literally don't have across 30 or so odd teams, which is not a massive sample, right? It's somehow everyone on Twitter has gotten the 10th, 11th, and 12th pick every draft. I'm not sure who is getting this first overall pick, but it certainly hasn't been me. It's just the influencer bump getting first, second, third overall.
Literally,
picks.
he gets it in every draft.
This is disgusting. I'd like some sort of investigation, maybe by Congress. So I actually do think, though, I was able to choose 2 players who I'd have to check, and you can't check on DraftKings. Their system simply doesn't work that way. So I don't know. But I don't think I have any Allen Lazard, and I really don't plan on having much Allen Lazard. I mean, I just I really struggle to see a player who has been a tertiary receiver on an offense.
A tight end. Tight end.
Yes, he is the backup tight end on an offense that has desperately needed someone other than Devontae Adams to step up at receiver or tight end. I don't see him making this massive leap just based on the idea vacated targets. I mean, he has finished in yards per route run since 2019, 51st, 49th, and last year, 88th. His target shares are all 15% or below in the past 3 seasons. And I just don't see how he goes so significantly ahead of his teammates. Every player obviously has their cost. That's why we put the caveat here that I'll get some amount of these players if they come to the right cost. But I don't get why he goes 25 picks ahead of Christian Watson, why he goes 80 picks ahead of Sammy Watkins. Do we have some sort of strong belief based on anything he's put on tape, based on any of his numbers, that he is significantly better than these players? I personally don't. If you like Allen Lazard, you loved him coming out of college, whatever you do, I understand why you would take him based on the upside of being Aaron Rodgers wide receiver 1. But I don't think he should have really any edge over his teammates, given what he's done since he's entered the NFL. So I'm not taking him where he goes right now as like a wide receiver 3-4, probably wide receiver 4 should be accurate.
Yeah, Denny or Pat, before you jump in, I'll just read, like, it's been fueled in part by Aaron Rodgers saying he's been our dirty work guy for most of his career here. Now he's getting an opportunity to be a number 1 receiver. I'm not worried about him at all stepping into that role. I feel like he might be exaggerating a little bit that he's not worried at all. But
yeah, I mean, this team reminds me of when we got, I think it was 2015, Jordy Nelson goes down with a preseason ACL tear. And we're like, I guess Randall Cobb is just a wide receiver 1 now. No, players who aren't wide receiver 1s and jump into wide receiver 1 roles are often just bad for the offense. Like that's how you like have vacated targets that don't add up to the sum next year because the offense gets worse. You don't just get to keep throwing the ball if you're throwing the ball at 5 yards a target to Allen Lazard. You lose plays because of that, because your offense isn't as good. I don't think it's going to be that sort of dreadful experience. The cost obviously isn't what we were paying for that, the Randall Cobb bump that year, but like the uncertainty around the offense, losing Davante Adams plus trying to backfill it with a guy like Allen Lazard, like the offense could just be significantly worse because of that, and not you get to play the Davante Adams role.
Well, there is, look, I wrote up Allen Lazard in the Packers preview, which I'm sure you all read, and I conceded that yards per route run, targets per route run, like there's nothing here to point to Allen Lazard being some sort of underrated pass catcher. Like if anything, he's vastly overrated, and he's probably not good. But saying that.
Hold on, yeah, I got to turn on several recorders.
You've never let that step, did you?
I would like to point out before we finish the sentence that Denny started his attack on A.J. Brown by saying, I understand that he's really good, and he stared his defense of Allen Lazard by understanding he's probably very bad.
Yeah, Denny, just real quick, state your date of birth and full legal name.
I will. I'll give you my social number right after this. But, look, if Aaron Rodgers wants him to be the wide receiver 1, he's the wide receiver 1. There's nothing we can do about it, and I want to do something about it. Trust me. I don't like it at all. But at some point you have to concede that, especially with a quarterback, a veteran quarterback who has such power over his team. Right? This is Aaron Rodgers' team from top to bottom. Whatever he says goes. Okay. If he says Lazard's the wide receiver 1, that's it. That's the end of the discussion. And so. Maybe he'll force feed Lazard.
Why has he never thrown to him before?
Because he had Davante. I mean, who in the right mind would ever throw it to Lazard if they had Davante Adams?
He for a while had he would carry 2 or 3 fantasy viable receivers. The Davante Adams vortex was a relatively recent Aaron Rodgers phenomenon where he only locked on to one guy.
Mm-hmm. But you can throw to a second guy too, and they tried, and it certainly wasn't Lazard.
He's 26-year-old with a career high for 513 yards. He has an injury history. I mean, he is almost literally a tight end. But I mean, it is. I mean, Denny's right. You can't just ignore Aaron Rodgers saying that he's the number 1 receiver.
Right. I mean,
I just might.
If you can draft him. If you can draft him as your wide receiver 4 or something, I mean that
his ADP is that too. His ADP right now is currently wide receiver 43, and I bet it will. I bet the Sammy Watkins ADP, as it always does, will increase. I bet the Christian Watson ADP will increase unless the training camp gifts are drops. But I think there'll probably be gifts of wow, man, he got some separation, and I know no one's wearing pads, but he scored a touchdown. That's pretty cool.
The answer here might just be Robert Tonyan, by the way. If he's fully
I have some Robert Tonyan.
You need so much less too with the tight end eligibility. One thing that's interesting, I pulled up the game splits app over here, and the splits for Lazard are interesting. He's with and without Adams. I mean, because you mentioned the target share, Kyle. I do think it's a little unfair to talk about his target share, given that he's played with Davante Adams, the target vortex. So, looking at his splits without Adams, though, he had 4.48 targets in the games with Adams and 4.6 targets in the 5 games without Adams. So it's not like he's been a massive target hog, even when Adams is out. And I guess the one thing that's nice about Lazard is he's been able to be used in a variety of ways. Like they use him in the slot. They used him deep a couple years ago. They use him more intermediate. So, maybe that helps him be kind of a number one option. But I tend to be with you, Kyle, that you can't force someone to be a wide receiver one. And
you see it fail like every year with like the dot connecting. Like, well, like sure. I mean, I know that he's horrible, but Brashad Perriman, those targets are coming no matter what, right? And then he's on the waiver wire in week 3.
And what if they add Will Fuller, Julio Jones? I mean, that type of situation would really be a big problem for your Lazard shares.
But yeah, so Alan Lazard, we're all down except for Denny, because there are reasons to be. Denny's not the only one. I mean, there is. I have noticed.
Down. I'm not up, but I'm not down.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It is also good, though, that we all didn't come on here and be like, just shaking each other's hands like, good job, great picks. None of us are disagreeing with each other because originally we were all going to take turns like, I want to be the one to defend X and Y. And then I threw out a player and everyone's like, crickets. No one wants to defend him. So it's good, though, that it didn't turn into us just like handshaking each other on being like really good at fantasy football. Actually, it's probably.
I did promise that in the intro, but I wanted consensus. I wanted 9-0 for every decision. Instead, we're getting 6-3.
I pulled up stats with the intention of defending Lazard, but the stats did not make me like him.
So who are you not going to defend now, Pat? Who is the first player you are not drafting?
I am not drafting, and this is a bit of a risky one, guys. The highest ADP so far is I'm willing to take bold stances. I'm not taking Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon going on a 1-2 turn. My deal with Joe Mixon, the thing with Joe Mixon that I really struggle with where he's going at this very high price is that I think he got almost no chance of being a 3-down back. He got used a little bit more in third downs at the beginning of last season. The Athletic had a really nice breakdown of showing his third down snaps as the season progressed. And it was really stunning how his role declined in such a serious way. And Perine's role increased throughout the season. They really trust Perine as a blocker. They do not trust Mixon as a blocker on third downs. I think last year was his opportunity to prove them wrong with Gio Bernard finally leaving. If anything, now things are going to get worse because Chris Evans really flashed some ability as a receiver. So if he can, get them to trust him enough as a blocker to have him be used, I think, as a more dynamic receiver than Mixon, then Chris Evans should be, involved in a decent way. And if that doesn't happen, Perine's probably got that, third down blocking role. So if Mixon's not going to be involved in third downs at this price tag, it's really a bet that he just scores a ton of touchdowns. But he already scored a ton of touchdowns last year. So you're paying for that. People saw him last year become the guy you needed in some important weeks. He has been a really prolific touchdown scorer, but that's all baked in. You're basically just really hoping he can continue to load up on touchdowns when you need it most. We know those are a fluky outcome. Touchdowns, very difficult to predict. I think this team might also lean a bit more into the pass than they did, particularly at times last year, because the offensive line is quite a bit better. And I think particularly as pass blocking unit, they should be much upgraded. Last year's offensive line wasn't actually that bad in run blocking. They were terrible at pass blocking. So the major upgrades that we're seeing from the offensive line perspective should be really helpful to the passing game, but might not have a gigantic impact on Mixon. And it might actually hurt Mixon if they can rely on Joe Burrow in the passing offense, which is the real strength of this team, to deliver the scoring instead of handing it off to Mixon way too much like they did last year.
You hit on some of the central points against Mixon. For one, he actually had flukily low touchdown totals for a long time until last year. Then, got up to 16, which 16 is usually a fluke no matter how good you are, unless you're one of the 2 or 3 best backs in the NFL. You're not usually scoring 16 touchdowns. And you talk about the third down stuff. It's just the Bengals. It's almost like an Antonio Gibson type situation where it's not as bad as it is with Antonio Gibson. Like the Bengals, seems like they look for reasons to never just fully commit to Joe Mixon. They did at least commit to him on early downs for several years now. But even last year when he kind of flashes as a pass catcher, he still gets yanked off the field. And they just seem to always find some reason to not go all the way with Joe Mixon. And it certainly seemed like last year is going to be a career best year for Joe Mixon, I feel like. And I mean, RB7, I don't think he'll be like a disaster as the RB7, but I could certainly see not being the guy who's going to bet that he's repeating his 2021, like lock, stock, and barrel, basically.
Yeah, Mixon isn't like a player because of what Pat said. I don't think he's not like Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry level runner. I really don't see him threatening like the 1,800-yard season. You can survive Derrick Henry catching literally 0 passes if he runs for 2,000 yards. That's not Mixon. It probably never will be Mixon. And it really does seem unlikely that he does the pass catching thing where like Najee Harris doesn't have to run for 1,800 yards. He can have a game where he like sets the target record for a running back because his guys are just checking down to him. So I don't see him checking either of those boxes. And I think he's fine. Like his ADP is like just actually behind where he finished in points per game, but I don't see him having the Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler type of breakout where you have to have him. There are one of like 8 players in a season you have to have, especially in like a best ball context. You have to have some combination of a few of these players because they so greatly outperform even like, second round ADP. I think because of what Pat said, because he's not the elite runner and the pass catching stuff, he doesn't have an avenue to absolutely burying you. And that's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm reaching into, second or third round or top of the first round for running backs is guys who can so greatly outproduce expectation that you are just burying your opponents. I think he's a good player who has a good role. I don't think he has a way that I'm looking back at the season like I had none of him and I lost all my entry fees.
Right. Yeah, I mean you're probably having to draft him at his ceiling. Whether it was because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase dominated targets or because Joe Mixon didn't make for a compelling target in the Cincinnati offense. He was barely top 30 in targets per route run among running backs last year who had at least 150 pass routes. I think that's somewhat of a red flag, but it's something that we, kind of confirms what we know about Mixon is that he's not like a dominant pass catching force out of the backfield. And so to draft him with that in mind, that he's going to exceed this RB7 ADP, I think it just doesn't check out for me. Top 10, sure. I mean, whatever, he's not going to crush you like Pat Daugherty said a minute ago, but I'm not thrilled. I don't know who would be excited about drafting him at RB7. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is like kind of the heart of the matter. He's not going to like kill your team as long as he stays healthy. But I think we already got the Joe Mixon ceiling year, and I'd rather take a different ceiling bet with that kind of draft capital. But that's just me. And real quick, before I move on to my first player, Denny Giovanni Bernard's name was mentioned. I'm assuming you still have him on every team this summer, right?
I have 100% exposure as I have every year since 2014.
This is gonna be the year probably that we don't talk about him, and then it finally does happen.
I would like the listeners to know.
Feeling. I'd like the listeners to know that I think Denny was like, between let's call it takes between our stuff, looks down at his phone, totally reasonable. We're all like trying to check for news, make sure we're not missing anything, just we're getting up and stuff. And he hears Giovanni Bernard and looks up at the screen and his eyes like cartoonishly pop out. He's like, "Oh, Giovanni Bernard, what's going on? I'm here."
That's right.
Personal hero to the man. Some people looked up to Jack Kennedy growing up. Denny looks up to Giovanni Bernard.
He was pretty good as a rookie.
He was. No one, Zoomers don't remember.
My first player, I'm not even gonna build. It can be brief, but are any of you guys in on Zeke Elliott? I mean, I know as an entire industry we're not, but can he keep getting away with this, et cetera, et cetera? I wasn't in on him at all last year. There's like kind of a frequent point of contention between myself and John Daigle, where I was like already all the way out last year. And that was another. Who won the Zeke argument?
I don't know.
Year? Like,
I think it was the non-Zeke.
Did anyone win?
I think
Faders won.
Yeah, Faders won almost without a doubt.
Did we really? I feel like it was a Pyrrhic victory. Because
why Pyrrhic?
Scored like 22
because we drafted
touchdowns.
Kamara instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who was right. And are any of you like the Zeke? He's the RB16 right now in underdog. Is that appealing in any way? Or I mean, are we just he can't keep getting away with this, right?
It's so ugly, and like the way he produces is so disgusting at this point. Just based on pure volume and like massively positive game script. I hate it so much. I am ready though. I am mentally and emotionally prepared for the Ezekiel Elliott eating salad stories that are coming up. You know, like you know, Zeke, watch out for Zeke. He's eating salad. He's trimming down. He's watching his weight. This and that. You know, those are coming. You know, wait till August. Those are coming. And
quinoa bowls.
So, you know, the from a salad based standpoint, I think we could see his ADP rise. But at RB16,
it can't rise anymore in RB16.
Oh, it will.
It will rise. It will rise.
Lord,
it'll get to RB12.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
don't discount the brand name value when the casuals come in. They're
I
going to
don't even recognize this country anymore.
For real.
Yeah.
Like
he'll be in the late second by the time it's all said and done.
Disgusting. To defend Zeke, I'm not drafting a ton of him. I think I'm probably still below average, like number of drafts versus how often you should be getting him. I'm probably below average. I don't have 0. He's not a player that I'm like, I will not take at any cost. He was top 10 in both rushing and receiving expected fantasy points last year. He's on a team that still blows my mind because I felt like they were kind of a disappointment. The Cowboys led the NFL in scoring last year, and they ran incredibly hot on big, like EPA swing defensive
I think
plays.
they scored like 72 points against the Eagles B team in week 18. I'm just gonna say that's how they led the league in scoring.
It still blows my mind they did. Cause like, where's my 1,600 yards from CeeDee Lamb? If they lead the league in scoring, I deserve that. And I never got it, but they led the league in scoring, and he didn't run purely hot on touchdowns, right? It isn't like the Mixon thing where your team scores a lot and you get to 15, 18 touchdowns. He sort of doesn't. Like, I think if you are top 10 in rushing and receiving expected points, you play on maybe the best offense in the NFL, there is room for that like 18 touchdown season. But given how I don't want to say untalented, but given how dusty he seems, I'm not really taking much of him. I think there is definitely room for an outlier touchdown season where he gets around 300 touches and scores 15, 16 times. But it's another one where he's not super expensive right now, but I think we're well past the days where Zeke is a player you needed to have. I think he's worth taking because he's not crazy expensive, but if he keeps going up, he'd be a player essentially for the next month I'd get to none of for 2 months, whatever.
Yeah, I'm with you, Kyle. Like, I have taken him. I actually took him either earlier today or yesterday. So
wow, this is quite an admission.
Yeah, I did take him.
You're currently taking him right now.
Clearly give the microphone name and phone number.
I'm willing to take him where he's going because, you know, to Kyle's point about like, can this guy bury me? When he gets late enough, like when I think at his current ADP, I'm like, I don't think he's going to bury me. And I think there's probably a wide receiver in this range or even another running back or even a tight end who could truly bury me. So, you know, I've got options.
A running back, a tight end, a kicker, a defensive lineman. These are the types of guys you could take over him.
Yeah. So if he falls, though, a little bit, it starts to get to a point where he just needs to fall in the end zone twice in the right week. You know, he just needs to kind of have the role. He just needs to be like a little healthier. He's only about 5 spots lower than Mixon was in rush yards over expected per attempt last year. He wasn't good, but like there are actually quite a few running backs who weren't particularly good in this metric who were not.
Were any running backs good last year? I mean, forget that one particular
Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard was one of the ones who's good. So, I mean, that's the problem. Tony Pollard in this metric was 5th. So I think the big issue is like, especially for people like us, like if you're taking Zeke in the year that Tony Pollard finally does it and takes over this role, I just don't
You'll
want
never
that
be able to
knife
live
the
with
heart.
yourself.
Yeah, you never will. So you'd rather give up a little EV on Zeke and, you know, put all your chips on Pollard because that's way more fun. But I am forcing myself occasionally to mix Zeke in at this price because I do think he'll get more expensive. I do think drafters are going to come in, they're going to peruse the landscape of this ADP, and one of their first takeaways will be, why can I get Zeke, you know, in like the mid-third, late, and he's going more like the 3-4 turn, right? Like I think the casuals are going to eat that up.
Yeah, he is on Underdog going pick 38. That is literally the 3-4 turn. It's like the second pick of the 4th round.
Yeah. All I can say is Denny won't be mad when his dad wins his home league taking Zeke in the 2nd round. And Denny won't be mad or tilted about that.
That's right. My dad will be, hey, he scores touchdowns. What do you want?
Your dad will take him like, you know, around of it, you know, still like the 1-2 turn. He'll be like, Ezekiel Elliott, why wouldn't you take him at this 1-2 turn?
He's good.
And he gets the trophy for a 4th straight year. We'll be right back after this. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet, to go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in Major League Baseball, on the PGA Tour, and on the NASCAR circuit. We also have a special contest on Tuesday and Thursday called Battle of the Bets, where you can agree or disagree with our experts for a shot to collect some cash. We're back for round 2. And Denny, we'll let you begin round 2.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm letting you go first. So you're on vacation. I want to see if you're still sharp. And so that's what we call your firings, by the way. It's the euphemism we've agreed on is vacation.
Right. Well, legally.
Legally it's supposed to be a vacation. So
all right.
Who's the first player for round 2?
I have a thing against AJ's.
And JJ's.
AJ Dillon. And JJ's, right. AJ Dillon, RB25 on RB25 on underdog. I mean, I sort of get it. In that, if he took over that backfield in the case of an Aaron Jones injury or whatever, the sky's the limit. Okay, as the kids are always telling me, the sky's the limit. So, so we
kids from 1992 maybe.
So I understand that. Okay, but I cannot force myself to draft him around guys like I don't know. Tony Pollard, I feel like, has a better path to production. Even like Damian Harris feels better to me than taking AJ Dillon at that spot. He is going after Antonio Gibson on underdog, which is I feel like I'm maybe a little bit curious, but yeah, I can't get excited for AJ Dillon there. I feel like his upside prospects are kind of baked in to his ADP. Are you guys going to tell me that I'm an idiot and I need to take AJ Dillon everywhere?
No, I mean, AJ Dillon, the one thing I'll say about AJ Dillon and the Packers backfield is, like, we know they have to run more this year.
Probably.
Like, they had to run more last year for stretches too. And like, none of their backfield, like, touch delineation makes sense to me anymore. Now that AJ Dillon like catches passes, and it seems like the roles are just like fluid between like who's the goal line back and who's like the third down back almost even. And then maybe there's some like weird unknown upside there with AJ Dillon, but I just feel like things have to revert back to normal this year, where Aaron Jones is the unquestioned pass catcher. He's still the lead option at the goal line. And yeah, RB25 feels very, very rich for AJ Dillon.
I do feel like if you want his archetype, I would just say like Kareem Hunt goes many, many picks later. Mm-hmm. And if you're, Kareem Hunt comes sort of from, and Ramondre kind of fits this, from the half of the backfield should get a lot of carries, but doesn't catch a lot of passes. Ramondre and Kareem Hunt have the other angle. But we like Pat said, it is interesting that like Dillon entered the league as like he may never catch a pass in his entire career. Last year they're perfectly comfortable throwing to him, and he wasn't particularly bad at it either. So there is maybe even some fluidity to me saying like I think he comes from the rushing without receiving angle. Maybe it is a little bit more of both, but I do think if you want that archetype where you are splitting a backfield for a team that should run a lot and should actually do it fairly well, lots of touchdown equity, yeah, why wouldn't you just take, Ramondre or Kareem Hunt as opposed to just the more expensive version of that archetype? Even if Dillon is maybe more talented, I also think Kareem Hunt and Ramondre are very talented. So you're kind of just paying a premium for a thing I think you can acquire cheaper. I like Dillon, but yeah, I've got more Kareem Hunt. I've got way more Ramondre than him.
That's a great point about archetype. Like Ramondre Stevenson is in the same spot and he's really good. So I'd much rather have him at his ADP for sure.
Yeah, I've taken some Dillon. I'm about even with the field on Dillon, but I feel like maybe I shouldn't be. Like maybe I should be a little bit underweight because I agree with the points you guys are making. I mean, Dillon doesn't have a chance.
But have you seen the calves or the quads? Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, good quads for sure, but
good quads. Good is a bit of an understatement.
If you look at Ramondre. And the reason I don't really like drafting Damian Harris is that I think Ramondre is the better back. I think he could just take over the backfield potentially, right? AJ Dillon doesn't have that like upside. Even Kareem Hunt's not going to take over the Cleveland Browns backfield, but he could get traded. He could go somewhere else and be a lead back. And then, oh man, like you have banked something with Kareem Hunt. With AJ Dillon, it's more like that type of he takes over the backfield scenario is really an Aaron Jones injury is that you're only out to that. So it does feel like a little bit less upside. He's maybe his rushing also I had like inflated in my mind looking up his breakaway percentage last year, not strong at all. RB 66 in breakaway percentage, not particularly good in elusive rating. Didn't do all that well in rush yards over expected. Like, see Jeremy Hill with nicer quads.
Kerrane, I would say the only thing that talking you maybe back into it, I don't think the only path is an injury. Like I said, I think there was like genuinely weird things going on with how the Packers used their backs last year, and it's maybe it's possible they're totally smitten with AJ Dillon, and there's just like no way his role gets smaller. And if his role last year is like his baseline, then RB25 is like very sensible, but it's just a very, very strange, like very hard to predict situation. I feel like, because then just coupled with like the Packers receiver chaos, I like the Packers offense could like manifest in like so many different ways this season. All right. So we closed the book on AJ Dillon, who can't decide if we came liking him or not liking him. I think we not liking him. Kyle
I cooled off a bit.
Pat cooled in real time. Kyle, who are you cool on as your second player?
I have Hunter Renfro. I think he's the one who sparked the, maybe we don't have to all support everyone who one person denies.
We were going to, just to be clear, we were going to defend each. We were going to nominate a player, and then we were going to hardcore defend that player when Kyle nominated Hunter Renfro. Literally the theme of the show was shifted.
So it became clear we would deny him 3 times.
So too soon.
So with Hunter Renfro,
hey, about the Bible? Anybody else hear about this? Anybody else read the Bible?
Oh boy.
Over 1.5 impressions too. That one actually doesn't typically hit the over, which is interesting. So bettors are cashing on this one. They will not be cashing on Hunter Renfro, who I just don't get how he goes in the same range of what I think are like some truly good like breakout options, like a Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney, where I think for me it's if you were doing projections, how do you find a path to not only project Hunter Renfro for anything more than like wide receiver 4 numbers, which is around where he's going, but how do you find, other than just like everyone in front of him gets injured, which happened last year, but they didn't have Davante Adams, any path for him to greatly outproduce his ADP? I just do not see that. I think the offense will also be worse, not factoring in the context of his target share almost without a doubt has to drop. The offense should be overall worse for passing. Maybe they can be more of an efficient offense, but I mean, like, look at situation neutral pace. Last year, the Patriots were 27th, and that's because I'm referencing the Patriots because they're getting Josh McDaniel. They were 27th. Raiders were 16th. The Raiders were 7th in pass rate over expected. The Pats were obviously 27th. I think those numbers meet in the middle somewhere. We saw an incredible amount of pace and passing from the Raiders that I don't think we see from this new grafted on Patriots Raiders in this year. And we know that's probably at least somewhat true. We've already gotten evidence of that because immediately the Raiders, who are just the Patriots West, go out and sign a running back, sign a fullback, draft a running back, and the running back and fullback that they signed were specifically from the Patriots, Brandon Bolden and Jacob Johnson, the fullback. So I think we see them pare down on their 3 receiver sets, probably play more 2 running back sets, probably pass less volume with less pace. And then you have to contend with Davante Adams and I assume healthy Darren Waller. Where is the room for him to meet his ADP? Maybe he is an efficient player. Maybe he
can maybe meet the ADP at kind of like the 36 to 40 range, but can he really greatly exceed it?
That's it. And I even think it's not a guarantee at all that he meets his ADP, let alone exceeds it by any reasonable standard.
I'd push back on the more or less 11 personnel part of that argument, because they ran a lot of 12 last year and they didn't run a ton of 11. Even after they lost Darren Waller, they went to a lot of 11 for a few weeks, and then they went like back to 12. When they got Waller back, they were running a decent amount of like only a couple percent, but like 3 tight end sets. Like they were doing like jumbo tight end packages. So I think you will see.
And they made
more.
The playoffs. What does that tell you?
Yeah. I mean, I think they should have kept their head coach, but what do I know? I think Renfro will see more playing time as part of 11. I do like that part of his profile. But the Raiders offensive line is not very good. And that's one of the things that I feel like gets missed a little bit. There's kind of this expectation they'll like be able to drop back a ton.
How do you counteract
all
that
these weapons
with short passes to Hunter Renfro?
It's true. Right? Yeah. 6.78 out last year, 6.6 the year before. I don't know. I have not drafted a lot of them on underdog, which is half point PPR, because it only doesn't help you so much. And you would imagine that Davante Adams is used more in the red zone, where Renfro's had like a decent red zone usage profile so far. He had 9 touchdowns last year. Kind of weird. But I think that part will really hurt. Adams, I think, has to take over more of those looks.
So only 3 wideouts had more targets inside the 10 than Renfro did last year. A lot of that came right. I'm seeing shocked faces. You guys, I've seen dry heaving, and
excuse me, I got to mute real quick.
We'll be right back. No, it's and you gotta believe that at least some of that, if not a lot of that, is going away with Davante Adams. Coming to this offense. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the numbers in front of me, which is why I'm a professional. But you got to, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Renfro go off when Waller was hurt?
He did.
Yes.
He did.
Okay, there, it's over. That's the argument. I mean,
some of that was the personnel stuff, though, is that they shifted to more 11 when Waller was out.
He also kind of stabilized. But I mean, to me, it's like, why don't overthink this? Where Davante Adams isn't just like the preeminent target dominator in the NFL, one of the preeminent red zone threats in the NFL. Yeah. He's also Derek Carr's soulmate. Like, they talk about each other like they are like literally soulmates. And who do you think Derek Carr is going to be locking on to? And I don't think you really need to overthink it beyond that. And then when you have Darren Waller, one of the most highly targeted tight ends in the entire NFL, it's just hard to see the path. He's the wide receiver 39 right now. That feels like his absolute ceiling.
I mean, just to give you an idea of how much Renfro depended on red zone involvement, he saw more red zone targets than Mark Andrews last year, which is something.
Wow.
That's something.
That is something. Very much something. Pat, what is something? I can't do it. I was trying to do a transition.
What is something I could use as a transition to your next player?
They almost always come. There you go. Yeah. Who is your next player, Kerrane?
Antonio Gibson. I wanted to make it CH. I really kind of debated. Had some tough moments here this afternoon. Just walking around, pacing, trying to figure out if I should do Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Antonio Gibson, because I think
CH has come on the show, man. Like, come on, give him a
well. That's part of it, you know. I was told in no uncertain terms I should not choose.
Yeah,
CH.
you're out. You're out.
Yeah,
if you say.
But I also,
even
though I think, he seems like a great guy. Even though I think Antonio Gibson is a better player than CEH, there's a couple things that have me ultimately choose. One, I think CEH feels like maybe his ADP drops a little bit. This McKinnon stuff maybe not fully baked in, so maybe I will start drafting him when that happens. Waiting on that. So far hasn't happened yet. The other thing is that CEH is on the Chiefs. You know, one way that a guy can completely bury you is that he just happens to be in the right offense. You know, maybe learn a lesson from Leonard Fournette last year. It can kind of go wrong if the offense just sort of makes it happen for a guy who you don't believe in his talent. I don't have that type of concern when I'm fading Antonio Gibson, who I really liked last year as a potential breakout candidate, but he did not deliver on that. And through 2 seasons has not really shown the type of receiving efficiency that has me thinking he's this impending receiving star the way it looked like he might be when he came in as this highly, highly efficient receiver in college, but on a very small sample. We have a much larger sample of him in the NFL now. He seems to be a capable Josh Jacobsian level receiver, but not, I don't think, a real star in the receiving game. He's fine as a rusher. They don't want to be loading him up with carries, though. That's why they drafted Brian Robinson. I think they want him to be kind of more of like a Miles Sanders type of back. And he's a Miles Sanders type of back in a Carson Wentz-led offense with a middling offensive line.
Tough scene.
And his ADP is not cheap. Like, speaking of Miles Sanders, I was told this is a hot take. It doesn't feel like a hot take to me, but like, I am often looking at Sanders versus Gibson and going, give me Sanders. Sanders is someone
big time
who can, like, you know, you think about like a team that could have a really efficient rushing attack. The Eagles could support a really efficient rushing attack with Jalen Hurts. And if the passing game takes a step forward, they could score a lot of touchdowns. I just have a harder time envisioning that type of upside scenario for the offense as a whole when I'm looking at Washington, I'm not even sure Gibson has all of the goal line carries to himself. They might bring in Robinson for some of those.
That's
I mean,
where you really get at Pat, where he's threatened in like all the money areas. He's threatened. Clearly, they don't want him to be the passing down back. Now it seems like they might not even want to be the unquestioned goal line back. I mean, he wasn't a guy who like earned a blank check to be the early down back last year, just even beyond the goal line where he was wildly inefficient. It's probably because he's playing through 2 debilitating injuries, but he's had like toe and lower body issues like his entire NFL career. And he's just like a guy where you like see the storm gathering on like all 3 downs, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to feel bullish about him, in a Carson Wentz quarterbacked offense.
I mean, literally blurb from 2 days ago, and it doesn't take that long to find because nothing is happening, is the Athletic's Ben Standing writing that Brian Robinson could potentially be their answer for goal line short yardage stuff. And it's exactly to both your guys' points that, like, if he just ends up being a bunch of empty calorie carries between the 20s, there's just not a lot of ways that he can beat you with that. And that is what things are shaking up to be. Like, J.D. McKissic was 5th in yards per route run last year, and he's elite at what he does. There's not a strong incentive for them to let Antonio Gibson be the 3rd down back. Given, like, and the Athletic's Ben Standing, he cited like the fumbling issues or just the lack of goal line efficiency. Like, there's not a strong reason. He hasn't earned every single goal line carry on a team that might not even be near the goal line that often. So I could see him having a good season that is really not that, like, if he's as good as I think he is, I still think he's good, but the role could not match that, and it wouldn't even matter.
Dennis, any thoughts on Antonio Gibson?
My thoughts are,
you'll be watching 12 of their games for us this year.
I will be. My thoughts are, if Washington goes like ultra run heavy like they did for a stretch last year, when they were actually winning games and just being super careful and managing Taylor Heineke, who knows how they're going to approach this Carson Wentz led offense. But if they do that, then I think Gibson has a shot to outperform his ADP by a bit. But no path to consistent pass catching is just a killer for him.
It is just a killer. I was supposed to do a horrible transition.
I enjoyed it. You seem genuinely bummed out.
Well, it is. It's sad. He was supposed to. Antonio Gibson will be one of the guys whose career arc makes like the least sense in recent history because we thought he was the pass catcher, and then he was never the pass catcher.
Well, CH is a similar thing. It's like we know one thing about this guy. He's going to be a good pass catcher. And it's like, whoa. Nope.
Yeah, we don't know anything at all.
Tune in.
Yeah. The final player of the show, and we don't have to talk about this one very long, but maybe I've just imagined this, but I feel like there's been a Brandon Cooks movement. He's the wide receiver 26 right now, an underdog. And he's another guy where I feel like, he finished, I think, as the wide receiver like 22 last year, but wide receiver 26 just feels like his absolute ceiling, where it's still Davis Mills. It's still going to have to be a run-based offense. He doesn't have like super impressive increased target competition, but there are second-year guys and Nico Collins and Brevin Jordan. Mechie's there now. We don't know when he's going to be healthy, but I just like when I draft almost any pick, I want at least some unknown upside, some untapped potential, and I feel like the well is just totally dry for Brandon Cooks, and I just can't. Anytime I'm on the clock and like the decision is Brandon Cooks or, I'm just always going the or. I feel like,
yeah, extremely boring pick. I'll say it. I'll be brave and I'll say it. You look at the underdog ADP, and again, this ADP is a little bit skewed of what we might see in all.
It's all Kyle's, it's all Kerrane's, so right. Take it with a grain of salt.
But let's just consider this for a moment. Brandon Cooks is going right around Gabriel Davis. That's I know there of all the hot, extremely hot and hateful Gabriel Davis takes out there. That's not a decision for me. That's easy. Okay. Even Juju Smith.
That's first day of school.
Yeah. Is it I think more appealing than Brandon Cooks. Like, okay. Yeah. We get it. He's going to have a 30% target share in an offense that's not going to throw it unless it absolutely has to. And they're going to operate as, ultra conservatively as any offense in the league. I don't know. I just don't. I don't get I've seen the buzz. I don't get the buzz.
Okay, so it's not just me. I feel like there was buzz.
There's a buzz.
There's a little bit of buzz. I'm not going to put him as a guy that I'm like not drafting, even though I'm not really drafting him right now. But I do think like he does strike me as a guy whose ADP will probably fall a little bit as part of this
I do agree with that
shift from the wide receiver position. Because I think like Cooks is one of those guys you get to a point in the draft where like all the sickos took all the wide receivers and you're like, I need a wide receiver and Brandon Cooks is the only one left. And so like that dynamic maybe shifts to where, yeah, like what if he goes, you know, like the end of last summer, we were seeing Marquise Brown fall into like the 9th round. We were seeing DJ Shark fall into like the 9th round. You know, those guys are a little more exciting, but we weren't that excited about Marquise Brown last year. Maybe Cooks is more in that range, you know, and at that price, I think he's more interesting because the upside that you're getting, and it's not a lot of upside, but it's that Davis Mills takes a step forward. If Davis Mills takes a step forward, then you get a tiny little slice of upside to go with your very, very boring Brandon Cooks pick.
And I do feel like everyone's discounting the possibility that Davis Mills just might actually be good. And when you have that many solid performances as a rookie, there is always a chance that you just might actually be good. And Davis Mills could just actually end up being good. And that would, like you say, play into Brandon Cooks maybe finishing like in like the wide receiver 18 to 24 range or something. No one else wants to entertain the possibility that Davis Mills might be good. Probably a good way to end the show.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Putting people in a position where they might have to say Davis Mills could be good. That's just not responsible podcast hosting. So it's probably the end of the show. I think it was good. We volleyed back and forth. No one got violent. It was all seemed very reasonable to me.
Hardly anyone cried.
Yeah, only we were gagging. What did you say, Denny? That had us all doubling over.
Shoot,
like I had a hernia.
It was Hunter Renfro's
yeah, red
targets
zone,
inside the red zone. Yeah. That left.
I had an ulcer, but it's fine.
Sorry about that.
So a very, very, very good show. Hope you have a very, very good 4th of July this weekend, everybody. A good old federal holiday coming up. We will be back next week. Denny and I will be back on Tuesday. Denny probably doesn't even know this yet. We are previewing the NFC South on Tuesday. Denny starts studying up. Matt Strout will be back next Thursday. So hopefully you all have a great holiday. Hopefully you will rejoin us next week. And yeah, hopefully you will join us, by the way, at the Fantasy Football Expo. I meant to ask you guys about that. Where we've been talking about flag football. We talked about it a little on Tuesday. There's rumors we might be podcasting from there. It actually is like just a rumor, like an internal rumor. I don't actually know if we're going to do it. But would you be able to take the heat? Like with a live podcast, where like an audience starts booing Denny every time he talks.
I'm used to that. I'm used to it.
So
I was born in the booing.
You were molded by it.
One of Denny's AirPods just has booze in it.
That's how you train. I have my kids stand in front of me and say, "You suck," while I talk.
Yeah, Denny, if we podcast live from the Expo in Canton, I think I actually will maybe pay a few people to boo you.
I was gonna say, you guys be like, man, I can't believe all these people are booing Denny. Wait, is that Kyle in the crowd? Like you?
I thought it was just a bit, but it seems like Kyle actually doesn't like him. Wow.
Wow.
And
yeah, guys, I made a real funny joke where I just screamed profanities at Denny for 45 minutes. That was funny joke, I thought.
Even the NBC lawyers are like, yeah, can you tell that guy to tone it down a bit? It's actually hurting our case.
I have to say it was very convincing. You went like full Daniel Day-Lewis and the method acting there. It's good.
So yeah, hope you join us next week. Hope you join us at the Expo. We're all going to be there. Happy 4th of July. We'll catch you later.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for all the latest fantasy and sports betting advice from NBC Sports Edge. And don't forget to sign up for NBC Sports Edge Plus to get the best-in-class draft guides, as well as season-long fantasy, DFS, and sports betting tools that will give you the edge.